Hello pretty people, welcome back, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm Izzy and I run the sustainable living blog, the Quirky Environmentalist, as well as this here YouTube channel where I talk all things sustainable living, environmentalism, life, science, just we have a good time. Today, as you may have guessed by the title, we're talking about some of the things I find most challenging about sustainable / trying to live more environmentally friendly. I put a poll up on my Twitter page and I put up a few ideas of future videos I had, and this surprised me because this was the most popular video, so here I am making it. I'll probably do this more on Twitter, to be honest, because I often have a lot of ideas and don't know which one to make, so making the one that's going to be most wanted by people is useful. Sorry if you can hear the rain on my window. This is an attic room, so you can kind of just always see the rain, and it is a miserable, very rainy day, so apologies for that. The purpose of today's video is not to put anyone off sustainable living or to have a woe is me, my life is so difficult kind of attitude towards things. I do think that trying to live more environmentally friendly and sustainably, first of all, is kind of essential in safeguarding the future of us and other life on this planet, and also it is very rewarding, and I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't want to and didn't think it was worthwhile. But I think that admitting what things are difficult and admitting challenges that we're facing can be the best way in, I guess, trying to overcome those challenges and trying to solve issues. And you may notice by the end of this video that all of the issues that I have with sustainable living are linked into sort of having one overarching solution, which, spoiler alert, systematic change in government and industry. But you know, we'll get to that. We're going to be real today. I'm going to talk about my issues, and I'm also going to talk about how those apply kind of, I guess, in the wider context of sustainable living to more people than just me, because I do have a lot of privilege. I do have access to a lot of things that help me live more sustainably than a lot of other people may do. So now that I've babbled on that intro, let's get into it. The first point that I want to make is that it is almost impossible living in modern society, living in the modern world, as most of us watching this probably do, to be zero waste and or plastic free. Some people claim to do it and some people try really hard to do it, and for most people it is virtually impossible. Now, I'll use the example of eating on the go. I work in hospitality. I work between 6 and 10 hour shifts at a time, which usually means that I need 2 meals a day in work. I sometimes make my own meals and bring them in, but this isn't always practical when I work like 12 close. If I work 2 12 closes in a row, what am I going to eat? I get a half an hour break in those, and in that time I have to go out, find food, eat food, and get back into work. And change in and out of my uniform in that time as well. There's a very limited amount of shops I can go to in that time and get food quickly enough. Most like convenience places where you just buy a meal deal, or Costa for example. I really like their new vegan cheese and ham toastie. But it's packaged in plastic. They take it out of the plastic to put it in the oven, and they take it out of that and put it in a cardboard box for you to take out and eat. And pretty much all of the places around me where I work are like, all of their to-go food is covered in plastic, and there are very limited options. Like I said, sure, I could take lunch in, but taking 2 meals a day into work isn't really practical. I'm just left so frustrated with the amount of waste that I produce. And even in work, half of our food has to be wrapped up in single-use items, the way it's made, and it's just not practical. And even if you try and make the right decision by getting, like, say, an aluminium can of something instead of a plastic bottle, I guarantee you that almost all of these places don't properly recycle. They might recycle like glass and food, but they're not going to recycle. And basically the world, especially the commercial world, the world of hospitality and food, if it's not small local businesses, don't really care. So this is a good reason to shop locally and shop in sort of local zero waste cafes and all the rest of it where you can, but again, these aren't accessible. The world is not made, or the modern world is not yet made to be plastic free. there needs to be big changes. Life gets in the way. No matter how hard you try, life will sometimes get in the way. And second of all, which links very much into this, is that trying to make more sustainable choices in life, whatever it may be, is incredibly time consuming. Back when I was a student and I lived in Nottingham, I had to go to 4 different shops to get my grocery shopping as plastic free as possible. If you're taking public transport, it often takes longer than driving. All of these things take time. As a student, I had the time to go out and go to 4 different shops to get my grocery shopping. I was also privileged enough in my last 2 years of uni and when I moved out in the summer, once I'd graduated, to live right next to or right opposite a grocery shop that had loose fruit and veg, and I could go and pick it up. Usually on my route to or from work or uni, I would go through the city centre, so I'd be able to stop off at zero waste shops when they were open. But not everyone has that luxury, not everyone has that time. Even if you're just working full time, or if you're working 2 jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over your head, or you've got kids, most of this doesn't allow the time to go out and try and be more environmentally friendly. It is almost impossible for a lot of people to do that. And again, links back into my last point, the world just isn't made for it. We need industry to start making more changes. We need supermarkets and shops to do better to help us, because when they make changes, it makes it easier for us to make changes. And it is refreshing to see that they're starting to make changes. For example, I know that Waitrose has trialled sort of fill your own bags of certain things. Asda's now starting it. I think Tesco's has recently gotten rid of plastic on their multi-buy tins, but it's happening really slowly and it needs to happen more to allow sustainability and trying to waste less on single-use items to be accessible for more people, because at the moment it just isn't. It's only people with a lot of time on their hands and usually quite a bit of money who have access to a lot of these products. And even someone who has the time and often the money, it depends where you live. Now that I've moved out of Nottingham, I'm at least half an hour walk from even my local supermarket, which doesn't sound like much, but when you're trying to lug your weekly shop back, you know, it takes a lot of time. And also when I'm talking about packaging and all the rest of it, plastic isn't the only issue, and I think a lot of people get caught up in plastic, and I'm the same, and single-use items, and I am guilty of this as well, because it's something you can see, it's something tangible, it's something really easy to see if you're reducing, and it's something that's also really easy to go, okay, this is plastic, this is bad, this is a thing, and you can see its the polluting effects directly on marine life, on nature, and all the rest of it. Whereas when it comes to things like air pollution and CO2, we can't see that with our eyes, and so yeah, there's kind of I get a little bit frustrated with the fact that everyone just focuses on one small issue like plastic straws, when very much, especially the plastic straw thing, where that impacts disabled people, and you're trying to ban something that is actually a lifeline for some people when you could be focusing on the much bigger issue. It's complicated. There's a lot bigger issues than just looking at one thing. My third point is getting around. One thing I really miss about living in Nottingham is the transport system. It's not perfect, it's a British transport system, it's not going to be perfect, but you could get buses pretty much anywhere in the city, although they were quite expensive and sometimes time consuming, you could still get them anywhere. And they ran reasonably late. The trams ran quite late. Again, for a British transport system, they ran really efficiently, apart from when they didn't. And it was just generally really easy to get around. Part of it was because I live relatively near to the city centre, but I could get pretty much anywhere I wanted to on public transport without too much difficulty. But now that I've moved back to Cardiff, and I don't even live in Cardiff, I live outside, to get into the city, and that's the city centre, I have to walk to a train, which then takes 10 minutes to get into the city, and if I want to go anywhere that's outside the city centre, I then have to find another bus to take, or have to walk, and it's a lot more time consuming, it's a lot more difficult, it's not that cheap, and there is a bus stop just outside my house here, but the buses stop at 6:30 p.m. Like, does no one does the council think that no one needs to go anywhere after 6:30 p.m? Like, that's just ridiculous if you ask me. And I'm currently learning to drive. I've been putting off learning to drive because I just didn't really need it and didn't really want to learn to drive. I wanted to try and get anywhere I could on public transport. But at this point, like, to allow me to do what I want to do with my life and to allow me the freedom to just get around, I kind of need to be able to learn to drive, because I can't rely on public transport for a lot of what I want to do. And that sucks. I really want to be able to use public transport. And even when I do use public transport, my trains are more often than not late. If I want to go anywhere long distance in the UK, it's barely affordable for most people. It's extortionate. We need a complete overhaul of the public transport system in this country. I don't think that's news to anyone. But yeah, it just really frustrates me because I want to be able to use public transport and to be able to get everywhere like as low carbon as possible, but I can't anymore. For a lot of people, a lot of places in the UK, there's barely any public transport links at all, especially if you live more rurally. And people need cars, and I don't think they should. If I'm struggling as someone who lives in the suburbs of the city, then someone who's living out in the country is really gonna struggle, and that frustrates me. I think this is the fourth point I'm gonna make, is something that I like to call green guilt. I've written a blog post about it, which I will link in the description if you feel like reading that. I wrote it a little while ago, but it's still very relevant and has been relevant for the entire time that I've been trying to make more sustainable and ethical choices. And it is this idea that I never feel like I'm doing enough, even though I know in sort of my heart of hearts that I'm making big changes, that I'm making reasonably big changes, and I'm trying my best to live as sustainably as possible in a world that doesn't allow me to. I still feel guilty when I indulge in, say, I want a takeout and it comes all this plastic packaging, or I need a new pair of underwear, and well, a lot of sustainable brands just don't do stuff that I need. And just when you make everyday choices and you just feel guilty because you know that it's not the most sustainable choice you could be making, or you just don't feel like you're doing enough. And this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with who are sort of more into sustainability. And I think that a certain amount of guilt is helpful because it's what gets a lot of people into making more sustainable choices in the first place. But it can be crippling. It can turn into something that is more crippling than helpful. And I think that that's something that hits a lot of people, including me, quite often. Just want to make the right choice, and a lot of the time there isn't the right choice. Like, there's a choice between getting vegetables that are plastic free but from the other side of the world, and getting buying food from a surplus food shop that's otherwise going to go to waste but it's covered in plastic. And it's just this frustration with not being able to make the right choice a lot of the time, and also just feeling incredibly guilty about the choices that you do make. And that's something that I go through waves of, I suppose, and I have to kind of learn to just go, nope, you're trying your best, you're doing good. And it's also a reason to keep taking action because you feel in control of things, and also to get involved in climate activism because, like I've said so many times already, there's only so much we can do as individuals without the system changing, and we need the system to change to allow us as individuals to keep doing more, and to allow it to be accessible for us to keep doing more. And something again that is more of a mental thing than anything else is eco-anxiety. Now, I've seen a lot of people in the sustainability community talking about this recently, and it's just this fear of the unknown. That we know the way we're going with pollution and our carbon output and the climate crisis, that we are having a negative impact on the world, and we know that things are going to change, but we don't know how fast, we don't know how much it's going to impact us and the natural environment. And it's just this fear of the unknown of the future, and I guess it's helplessness, because while a lot of us are trying to make changes, the governments of a lot of world superpowers just don't seem to care. And industry leaders and all the rest of it, they care more about economic growth and the growth of their companies than they do about safeguarding the future of the planet for future generations and also for the natural environment. And this is, oh my gosh, this is the biggest thing for I think a lot of people, and also a good reason to get involved in climate activism beyond just making personal changes. Yeah, we know that things are going to change, and we know that we have to make a change, but we don't know what the future holds. We don't know how bad things are going to be. We don't know exactly what to prepare for. And some days it's really hard to just get up and carry on, because we know that we shouldn't just be doing business as usual, but you have to, because we still live in a society. You still have to put food on the table, you still have to pay your bills, even though, you know. So I think that there's a lot of that going around, and it's not just me that feels that way in terms of getting very frustrated and anxious about the future of the planet. One thing I try and do to combat this is, first of all, I don't think this is the end of humanity forever, and even if we all die off, which I hope we don't, but even if a huge portion of the human population was going to die off, nature will find a way, and the planet will bounce back. And I try and keep myself in that, and also the fact that I'm doing what I can, and I'm trying to encourage other people to do what they can, and ask the government or demand the government do more and industry do more. And so yeah, there's only so much you can do, and you kind of have to make sure that you're looking after yourself in all of this, is the point I want to make. And I think that's the last point I want to make. There are obviously little bugbears here and there and little things that are very frustrating, but those are the 5 main big things within sustainability and trying to live more eco-consciously that I find really difficult or that frustrate me. Just again, didn't say this to put people off, I hope I haven't. If you have any bugbears that I haven't mentioned or want to talk more about the ones that I have mentioned, say it in the comments. If you haven't started trying to make more sustainable choices, or you haven't got involved in sustainability, then let me know why. Is there a reason that, is there something putting you off? Is there something that you think will be really difficult? Let me know, we can talk about it in the comments. If you want to read more about not just the negative things, because this video was just about the negative things, then I have a recent post on my blog where I talked to fellow bloggers and gave my input on the successes and challenges of living sustainably and what we enjoy about it and why we got into it, so check that out in the description. Like I said, my post on Green Girl is in the description. If you want more, you can follow me on social media where I post pretty regularly just snippets of sustainability and my general life. I post regularly on my blog as well, and I'm trying to post more regularly here on YouTube, so subscribe for more and like the post if you liked it. Didn't want to be a downer in this post. I hope that this has been I don't know, invigorating in some way, I suppose. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video, which I will make more positive than this one. Thank you, and see you soon.